I want you to try a little experiment with me. Just for a moment, erase everything you know about the world you're living in right now.
Okay.
Forget your job, forget the news, forget the device you're listening to this on. Close your eyes. We are traveling back in time.
I'm with you. Where are we going?
It is 1917. The air is freezing, that specific biting Russian cold that seeps right through your coat and into your bones. You are in Petrograd, the city we now know as St. Petersburg.
The epicenter of the earthquake, really. The entire world order is fracturing in this specific place at this specific time.
Exactly. The world is collapsing. The Russian Revolution is tearing the city apart. The streets are just boiling over. And amidst all this chaos, there is a 7-year-old boy.
Right.
He's standing at the window of an upper-floor apartment. He is safe inside, for the moment, wrapped in the warmth of a wealthy home. But he is looking down into the street.
And what he sees is going to change his life.
It's going to change his life, and you could argue it's going to change the course of Western thought forever. He sees a man being dragged away by a mob.
It is a terrifying image, and to really get the gravity of it, you have to understand who that man was. He wasn't just a random bystander caught in the crossfire.
No, he was a specific target.
A very specific one. He was a police officer, a sniper loyal to the Tsar. And in the slang of the time, the revolutionaries called them pharaons.
A pharaon. That sounds so ancient, doesn't it? Like something out of a museum.
It does, but this was flesh and blood. And this 7-year-old boy watches as this pharaon, this symbol of the old order, is dragged off by a lynch mob.
He sees the man struggling. He sees the crowd swarming like insects. And he knows, with that kind of intuitive clarity that only children have, that this man is going to a violent, likely fatal end.
That moment is the seed. That's the moment that arguably birthed one of the most important political philosophies of the 20th century. Because that boy was Isaiah Berlin. And he later said that sight gave him a permanent horror of violence that remained with him for the rest of his life.
A permanent horror of violence. And that is exactly what we are digging into today. We are doing a deep dive into the mind of Sir Isaiah Berlin.
Yeah.
Now, if you look him up, on Wikipedia or grab a textbook, you'll see these titles like Russian-British social theorist, philosopher, historian of ideas.
They're very dry titles.
They feel a bit dusty, don't they? They don't capture the electricity of the man. They make him sound like a statue himself.
They really do, and that's a tragedy because Berlin wasn't a guy who sat in a dark room writing dry treatises. He was a force of nature.
I've heard him described as the world's greatest talker.
Absolutely. A man who could dazzle a dinner party just as easily as he could dismantle a totalitarian ideology. But our mission today isn't just to walk through his biography. We want to understand how this man taught us to think about freedom.
Right. We're going to unpack his toolkit. And it really is a toolkit for the mind. We're talking about concepts like negative versus positive liberty, the famous distinction between the hedgehog and the fox, and the incredibly challenging idea of value pluralism.
And these might sound like dry academic terms.
They do.
But I promise you, by the end of this, you'll realize they are survival guides for the modern world.
I think so, too. And we're drawing this from a massive stack of record biographies, his own improvised lectures, his letters, and the accounts of people who knew him. We're going to piece together how the boy in the window became the philosopher of freedom.
Yeah.
But to understand the ideas, we have to understand the context. You can't separate the philosophy from the life. We have to go back to before that traumatic day in Petrograd. We have to go to Riga.
Back to the beginning.
Part 1 of our dive, the Russian Jew from Riga. Because Berlin always insisted on this identity, didn't he?
He was adamant about it. You have to remember, later in life, he becomes Sir Isaiah Berlin. He's a knight. He's the president of the British Academy. He is the ultimate insider of the British establishment, sipping sherry in Oxford common rooms.
The absolute peak.
And yet he would say, I am a Russian Jew from Riga, and all my years in England cannot change this. That is how I was born, and that is who I will be to the end of my life.
That is such a grounding statement. It suggests that despite all the accolades, he never felt fully English.
I think that's right. He always felt like an outsider looking in, which probably gave him his unique perspective.
So paint the picture for us.
Yeah.
What was Riga like in 1909 when he was born?
Riga was a boom town. It was part of Livonia in the Russian Empire, now the capital of Latvia, of course. But back then, it was this incredible melting pot.
A port city.
A port city, a hub of commerce. And the Berlin family wasn't just scraping by, they were wealthy. His father, Mendel Berlin, was a timber merchant.
And when we say timber merchant, We're not talking about a guy selling 2x4s at the local hardware store. This wasn't a small operation.
Not at all. No, this was big business. Mendel was the head of the Riga Association of Timber Merchants. This was massive industrial scale. The family owned vast forests in Russia. They would cut the timber and float these huge rafts of logs down the Daugava River to their sawmills in Riga. It's a very romantic, old-world image. You can almost smell the sawdust in the river water.
It feels like something out of a 19th century novel.
Yeah.
The Timber Baron Father.
It really does. And because Mendel was dealing with Western companies to sell this wood, the household was incredibly cosmopolitan.
So multiple languages.
Oh, absolutely. Mendel spoke Yiddish, Russian, German, French, and English. Isaiah's mother, Marie, everyone called her Musia, was fluent in Yiddish, Russian, and Latvian.
So young Isaiah isn't just learning one way of speaking.
He's swimming in a sea of languages from the cradle.
That has to do something to a developing brain, right? When you realize that table isn't just table, it's also tish and stole, it tells you that there is more than one way to describe reality.
Precisely. It primes you for pluralism. It primes you to understand that different cultures have different codes. And it wasn't just money and language. There was a serious religious lineage there, too.
Right. I read about this. It wasn't just secular wealth.
No, a very prestigious lineage. He was a direct descendant of Schneur Zalman.
Who was he?
The founder of Chabad Hasidism. So you have this fascinating intersection, the hard-nosed commerce of the timber trade, the worldly cosmopolitanism of the European elite, and the deep mystical roots of Hasidic Judaism. He's living in all these worlds simultaneously.
It's the perfect recipe for a complex thinker. But the idyllic life in Riga doesn't last. The family moves to Petrograd when Isaiah is about 6.
Right.
And they move into a very different world.
They move to the capital, they live on Angliski Prospect,
Sure.
and to give you a sense of the status they held, or at least the circles they were adjacent to, they shared their building with the absolute elite.
Like who?
Well, there was an assistant minister of Finnish affairs, there was a Princess Emeritinsky, and this is the detail I love, the daughter of the famous composer Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov lived there.
Talk about high society. That is the peak of the pyramid.
It was. But then history intervenes. The revolutions of 1917 hit, the February Revolution, then the Bolshevik seizure of power in October.
And this is where that contrast we mentioned becomes visceral. The Berlin family, being wealthy bourgeoisie, suddenly find themselves on the wrong side of history.
You're in danger.
The sources mention a detail about the neighbors that really stuck with me. It's almost cinematic in how it shows the world flipping upside down.
It is. The Princess Emeritinsky and Rimsky-Korsakov's daughter. These women who had lived lives of total leisure and art, suddenly they are forced to go out and sweep the yards.
Oh.
Yes. They are stoking the building's furnaces. The hierarchy didn't just collapse, it inverted. The servants became the masters, and the masters became the servants.
And young Isaiah is watching all of this. He's walking with his governess, seeing crowds marching on the Winter Palace Square. He is seeing the social fabric unravel in real time.
It's happening right outside his window.
And then the incident with the pharaoh. I want to dwell on that for a second because horror of violence is a phrase he used specifically. It wasn't just fear, it was horror.
It's a crucial distinction. Fear is, I might get hurt. Horror is, this is an abomination. Berlin specifically noted that the only people who remained loyal to the Tsar in the early parts of the revolution were the police. These pharaohs.
And they were fighting back.
They would snipe at revolutionaries from the rooftops. So the mob hated them with an absolute passion.
Which explains the brutality. This wasn't just a protest, it was war.
Precisely. The man Berlin saw wasn't just a random target. He was an active combatant in a civil war, essentially. But for a 7-year-old boy, the politics didn't matter.
No, of course not.
He didn't see a symbol of oppression or a tactical enemy. He saw a human being. He saw a man struggling against a swarm. He later described it as the man being taken to a not very agreeable fate, which is that classic British understatement he eventually mastered.
Not very agreeable. That chills me more than if he had described the blood. It implies a quiet, brutal execution.
Exactly. It left him with the conviction that no political idea, no matter how noble, whether it's equality or the revolution, is worth that kind of dehumanization.
It's a foundational experience.
It taught him that when you strip away the rules of civilization, what is left isn't paradise, it's the mob.
So, the Bolsheviks take over. The Berlins are identified as bourgeoisie. That's dangerous. You don't want to be a timber merchant in a communist revolution.
Extremely dangerous. They felt the walls closing in. They were being squeezed. So they decided to flee.
When was this?
They left Petrograd in October 1920 and went back to Riga. But even there, safety was an illusion.
Why? What happened?
They faced anti-Semitism. They had difficulties with the new Latvian authorities. It became clear that Eastern Europe, which had been their home for generations, was vomiting them out.
So they look west. In early 1921, the family moves to Britain. Isaiah is 11 years old.
Imagine that transition. You are 11, you've seen revolution, you've seen violence, you arrive in London, it's gray, it's different.
And you don't speak the language.
You speak Russian, German, maybe some French, but your English is virtually non-existent. You are a refugee, essentially.
And yet, this is the part that blows my mind. Within a year, he isn't just speaking English, he's proficient.
Proficient is putting it mildly. He devoured the language. He went to prep school in Surbiton, then St. Paul's School in London. And this leads us to the second part of our deep dive, the talker.
The talker.
Because Isaiah Berlin didn't just learn English, he weaponized it.
He became known for these breathless marathons of speech, didn't he? I love the image of this young Russian boy just overwhelming the British school system with words.
He did. A schoolmate of his, Michael Bonavia, described it beautifully. He said Berlin had a rapid, even flow of ideas and would make confident references to authors most of the other kids had never even heard of.
He left them mildly stupefied.
Mildly stupefied. He would just keep talking, connecting idea A to idea B to idea Z. It was just a torrent.
Usually the smart kid who talks too much gets bullied, or at least resented.
Yeah.
You know, the teacher's pet vibe.
That's the key to Berlin's personality. Bonavia noted that Berlin's essential modesty and good manners eliminated jealousy. He wasn't showing off to make you feel small. He was just overflowing with ideas.
So it was generous.
It was infectious. He wanted you to join him in the excitement. It wasn't a lecture. It was an invitation into the whirlwind.
He goes from St. Paul's to Oxford. And there's a funny story about his interview at Balliol College.
A chaotic interview, as the records call it. He was actually rejected by Bailey.
Can you imagine one of the greatest minds of the century rejected?
You can just picture it. He likely talked too fast, jumped topics too wildly, and the interviewers just couldn't keep up or thought he was scatterbrained.
So what did he do?
Well, undeterred, he applied to Corpus Christi College, Oxford, and got in. And once he was in the Oxford ecosystem, he thrived.
Thrived is an understatement.
First-class honors in Literae Humaniores, the John Locke Prize for Philosophy, where he actually outscored A.J. Ayer, another future giant of philosophy.
And then the big one, All Souls College.
Yes, All Souls is. Well, it's unique. It has no students, only fellows. It is the pinnacle of Oxford academic prestige. You are paid simply to think and research.
And he got in at 23.
At age 23, Berlin was elected to a prize fellowship there. And he was the first unconverted Jew to achieve this. It was a massive breaking of barriers. He had arrived.
So we have this brilliant young man firmly established in the British establishment. But here is the quirk that makes him so human to me.
Go on.
He hated writing.
He detested it. For a man whose books line the shelves of libraries around the world, he had a genuine aversion to the physical act of sitting down and writing.
Why?
He found it too slow. His mind moved faster than his hand could.
So how on earth did he produce so much work?
He talked. He dictated. He used a Grundig tape recorder. Most of his essays and even his books were originally improvised lectures or dictations.
That explains so much about his style. If you read Berlin, it feels like you're listening to a very smart friend speeding through a topic. It doesn't feel like a text. It feels like a voice.
Exactly. The sentences are long. They have clauses within clauses. He jumps from one idea to another. It's animated.
And his secretaries had to transcribe this.
His secretaries, and later his editor, Henry Hardy, had a heroic task. They had to transcribe these tapes. And the sources tell us that sometimes the secretaries would inadvertently type out Berlin's laughter or his jokes that he made to himself or friends while holding the microphone.
I love that image. You can see him pacing around the room, microphone in hand, just riffing on the Enlightenment, laughing at his own jokes.
It creates a sense of immediacy. He wasn't constructing a dry treatise, he was thinking out loud. He was often called the world's greatest talker and the century's most inspired reader. And that method allowed his personality to bleed onto the page. He wasn't hiding behind jargon.
Okay, let's get into the ideas that came out of those dictation sessions. We have to start with the animal kingdom. Part 3, the hedgehog and the fox.
Yes. This is probably his most famous cultural contribution. It's the one you see referenced in business books, psychology articles, even dating profiles sometimes.
And the irony is he didn't mean it very seriously.
Not at all. He called it an enjoyable intellectual game, right?
And he did. He was looking at a fragment from the ancient Greek poet Archilochus.
The fox knows many things, but the hedgehog knows one big thing.
It's such a simple phrase.
Yeah.
But Berlin spun an entire theory of human nature out of it. So let's play the game. Break down the categories for us. Who is a hedgehog?
A hedgehog is someone who relates everything to a single central vision, one system, one universal organizing principle. They want to boil the world down to a unified theory.
You want the one key that unlocks every door.
Exactly. For a hedgehog, if you understand the big idea, you understand everything. Plato is the classic hedgehog. Everything leads back to the forms.
Cool.
Dante is a hedgehog. Dostoevsky is a hedgehog. Nietzsche is a hedgehog. They have a hammer, and the whole world is a nail. They are centripetal. Everything moves inward toward the center.
Okay. And the fox?
The fox is centrifugal. The fox pursues many ends, often unrelated and even contradictory. They see the world in all its messy variety.
They're comfortable with chaos.
Or at least complexity. They seize upon the essence of a vast array of experiences without trying to fit them into one box. They don't mind if things don't add up perfectly.
So who's a fox?
Shakespeare is the ultimate fox. He doesn't have a theory of life. He just shows you life in all its infinite shades. Comedy, tragedy, kings, fools. Herodotus is a fox. Aristotle's a fox. Montaigne is a fox.
And Berlin applied this to Tolstoy specifically, didn't he? That was the whole point of the essay.
That was the point. He argued that Leo Tolstoy, the author of War and Peace, was by nature a fox. He had this incredible gift for observing the minute details of human behavior.
He saw the messiness.
He saw it perfectly. He could describe a hunting dog or a young girl at a ball with perfect clarity, but, and this is the tragedy, he believed she should be a hedgehog.
He wanted a theory.
He desperately wanted a unifying theory of history. He wanted to find the one big thing that explained why things happen. So his life was this tragic conflict between his fox-like talents and his hedgehog-like beliefs.
He was a fox, trying to force himself into a hedgehog's burrow.
Beautifully put. Yes.
It's such a sticky concept. Once you hear it, you start categorizing everyone you know. Oh, my boss is definitely a hedgehog. He only cares about the bottom line.
My partner is a fox. She's interested in everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is sticky. But Berlin warns us not to take it too rigidly. It's a heuristic, a way of seeing.
But it sets the stage for his more serious work.
It does.
Because if you are a hedgehog, if you believe there is one big answer to life, that can lead you down some dangerous political paths.
If you think you have the one true answer, you might be tempted to force everyone else to agree with you.
And that is the perfect transition to his heavy hitter. Part 4, Two Concepts of Liberty. This was his inaugural lecture at Oxford in 1958.
This lecture is legendary. It reintroduced political philosophy to the analytic tradition at Oxford. At the time, philosophy was very focused on language and logic.
And he brought it back to the big questions.
The biggest questions. What is freedom? Why should we obey the state?
And the core distinction he makes is between negative liberty and positive liberty. Now, we need to be careful here because negative and positive sound like bad and good. But that's not what he means at all.
Not at all. It's about logical structure. Let's start with negative liberty. Freedom from?
Okay. Negative liberty.
Negative liberty is the answer to the question. What is the area within which the subject, a person or group of persons, is or should be left to do or be what he is able to do or be without interference by other persons?
That's a mouthful. In plain English.
Leave me alone.
Okay, simple enough.
It's the absence of coercion. If I want to walk down the street or buy a specific book or worship a specific god or paint my house purple and the state or my neighbors don't stop me, I have negative liberty.
So it's about a protected space.
A protected sphere of private autonomy.
Yeah.
It has roots in Hobbes and Locke. It's about a frontier the state cannot cross.
Okay. That feels very familiar to us in the West. That's the classic liberal idea. My rights, my privacy.
Exactly.
No, it is positive liberty. Freedom, too.
This is trickier. Positive liberty is the answer to the question. What or who is the source of control or interference that can determine someone to do or be this rather than that?
So it's about who is in charge.
It's about self-mastery. I want to be my own master. I want my life and decisions to depend on myself, not on external forces. It stems from the desire to be a subject, not an object. I want to be moved by my own conscious purposes.
It sounds great, Ray. It's linked to the idea of democratic Athenian democracy.
Yeah.
We rule ourselves. Who wouldn't want self-mastery? I want to be the captain of my soul.
Exactly. And Berlin acknowledges that it is a valid and noble desire. But this is where the trap comes in. This is the aha moment of the lecture that really scares people.
What's the trap?
Berlin argued that positive liberty, while noble in origin, is historically prone to a terrible corruption.
Walk us through it. How do we get from I want to be my own master to tyranny?
Okay, follow the steps. This is a bit of a logical journey, but it explains so much history. Step 1. You start by saying, I want to be master of myself. But then you look in the mirror and say, well, I have a lower self, my irrational impulses, my addictions, my ignorance.
Right.
And I have a higher self, my reason, my moral compass.
Okay, me wanting to eat a donut versus me wanting to be healthy.
Exactly. So you say, true freedom is when my higher self rules my lower self. If I stop myself from eating the donut, I am free from my addiction. I have achieved positive liberty. I have conquered my base desires.
Still with you. That sounds like self-improvement.
But now, step 2, political thinkers step in. They expand this metaphor to society. They say, well, most people are ignorant. They're stuck in their lower selves. They don't know what their higher selves would want if they were rational.
I see where this is going. The masses are children.
Exactly. Step 3, the state or the party or the dictator says, we represent your higher self. We represent reason. We represent the nation or the proletariat or the true faith.
We know what's best for you.
We know what you would want if you were as wise as we are. Therefore, when we force you to do something, when we ban the donuts or force you to work on the collective farm or send you to re-education camps, we aren't coercing you.
They flip the script?
They say, we are actually liberating you. We are forcing you to be free. We are aligning you with your true, rational destiny.
That is the trap. It's Orwellian.
That is the trap. You use the language of freedom to justify total coercion. You claim to know people's true destiny better than they do.
And Berlin saw this throughout history.
He saw this in the French Revolution with Robespierre, who talked about the despotism of liberty. He saw it in Soviet communism. He saw it in fascism. They all claimed to be freeing the people while crushing negative liberty entirely.
It's a terrifying sleight of hand.
Yeah.
I'm not putting you in prison. I'm liberating your rational soul from your bourgeois ignorance.
Precisely. And Berlin's point was that we must hang on to negative liberty. We must preserve a space where the state simply cannot enter, even if it claims it's for our own good. Because once you accept that the state is your higher self, there is no limit to what they can do to you.
It's a defense of the individual's right to be wrong, to be messy, to be a fox.
Yes, to make your own mistakes, and to live with the consequences of them.
This brings us to another major pillar of his thought, part 5, value pluralism. This supports his whole idea of why we need to be careful with one big idea.
This is perhaps his deepest philosophical contribution, and it challenges a fundamental assumption of the Western Enlightenment.
What assumption is that?
The assumption that all good things are compatible. We tend to think or hope that in a perfect world we would have perfect liberty, perfect equality, perfect justice, perfect mercy, and perfect efficiency.
We think all the virtues fit together like a jigsaw puzzle.
That's utopia, the perfect society. And Berlin says, utopia is not just impossible, it is conceptually incoherent. It's a logical contradiction. Because values clash. And not just good versus evil. Good values clash with other good values.
Give us an example.
Liberty and equality. This is the classic one. If you have total liberty for the wolves, you cannot have equality for the sheep. If you allow the strong, the smart, and the lucky to have total freedom to accumulate wealth and power, you will have massive equality.
Right. Total freedom leads to hierarchy.
But if you want strict equality, you must curtail the liberty of those who are faster, smarter, or luckier. You have to stop them from rising too high. You cannot have 100% of liberty and 100% of equality at the same time. You have to trade off.
Or justice and mercy.
Right. If I am perfectly just, I enforce the law rigidly. I give everyone exactly what they deserve. If I am perfectly merciful, I forgive.
You can't do both at once.
I cannot do both simultaneously in the same instance. I cannot forgive the criminal and punish him to the full extent of the law.
So values are, what's the word? Incommensurable.
Incommensurable. You cannot measure them by a single yardstick. There is no common currency. And this means that tragic choices are unavoidable. We are constantly forced to choose between good things, and when we choose one, we inevitably lose the other.
That sounds depressing. It sounds like we can never win.
Or look at it differently. It's liberating.
How so?
Because it forces us to grow up. It forces us to accept that conflict is, as he said, an intrinsic, irremovable element in human life. If you believe that all good things can coexist, you will be tempted to use violence to build that utopia.
Because you think you can get to a perfect endpoint.
You'll think, if we just kill the enemies of progress, we can have it all. That's the hedgehog approach. Break a few eggs to make the omelet.
Right.
But if you accept value pluralism, you realize the perfect omelet doesn't exist, so you stop breaking eggs. You realize that compromise isn't a sign of weakness, it's a recognition of reality. You have to trade off. You have to balance.
They become a fox.
You become a fox. You accept that society is always going to be an imperfect balance of competing goods.
This connects to his interest in the Counter-Enlightenment, doesn't it? Thinkers like Vico and Herder.
Yes. Berlin loved these guys. The Enlightenment philosophers like Voltaire or Kant tended to be hedgehogs. They believed in universal reason that applied to everyone, everywhere.
The one true way.
They thought if we just used science and reason, we would find the one true way to live. And the Counter-Enlightenment thinkers argued that human culture is particular. Vico said that Romans thought differently than we do. Herder said that Germans have a different Volksgeist, a national spirit, than the French.
And Berlin loved this. He called it objective pluralism.
Meaning that values differ across cultures, but they are still values. They aren't just matters of taste like ice cream flavors. We can understand them, we can empathize with them, but we can't necessarily reconcile them.
He really was fighting against the rationalist Cartesian fallacy, the idea that there's a clear, distinct answer to everything if we just think hard enough.
He believed human cognition is language-based, messy, and historically rooted. You can't strip a human being down to a rational atom. We are products of our culture and time. We are messy creatures.
Speaking of his time, let's zoom back out to his life. Part 6. War, diplomacy, and famous encounters. Because he didn't just sit in a tower thinking about this. He was active during World War II.
He was. He tried to join the war effort, but he was barred from combat.
Why?
2 reasons. 1, he was born in Latvia, which complicated things legally regarding his citizenship status initially. But mainly, he had a birth injury. His left arm was damaged, so he couldn't hold a rifle. He physically couldn't serve in the infantry.
So he fought with words.
And his voice.
Yeah.
He worked for the British Information Services in New York City, and then at the embassies in Washington, D.C. and Moscow, and his dispatches from Washington became legendary.
I read about his analysis of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee in 1943. He was unsparing.
He was. He wrote a confidential report describing Senator Arthur Capper from Kansas. Listen to this description. A solid, stolid, 78-year-old reactionary from the Corn Belt who is the very voice of Midwestern grassroots isolationism.
Solid, stolid. The alliteration. He couldn't help himself.
Even in a confidential government document, he was a stylist. Winston Churchill actually loved reading Berlin's dispatches.
Really?
Yes. There's a story, possibly apocryphal but fun, that Churchill once mistook Isaiah Berlin for Irving Berlin, the songwriter.
No way. That sounds like a sitcom plot.
The story goes that Churchill wanted to meet the man who wrote the brilliant reports. So the staff invites Berlin, but they invite Irving Berlin, the American who wrote White Christmas.
Oh, no.
So Churchill is sitting at lunch asking about the war strategy and the mood in America, and Irving Berlin is answering about his latest musical number and how the film is coming along. It must have been a very confusing conversation.
I hope that's true. It's too good not to be. But his time in Russia during the war was much more serious.
Much more. In 1945 and 46, he went back to Russia. He went to Leningrad, and he met the legendary poet Anna Akhmatova.
Akhmatova was a giant of Russian literature, but she was living under the shadow of Stalin.
She was isolated, persecuted. Her earlier husband had been executed. Her son was in the Gulag. Berlin visits her in her apartment in the Fountain House.
It must have been electric. The exile returning to the motherland, meeting the voice of Russian suffering.
It had a profound impact on both of them. They talked for hours, well into the night. For Berlin, it was a reconnection with his Russian soul, with the suffering and the grandeur of Russian culture that he had left behind.
And for her?
For Akhmatova, Berlin was a messenger from the free world. She later called him the guest from the future.
But there was a cost.
A terrible cost. Stalin was paranoid. He reportedly asked, "Who is this nun who receives visits from British spies?"
Calling her a nun. That's so dismissive.
It's a mocking term. The meeting led to a crackdown on Akhmatova. She was expelled from the Writers' Union. It made her life significantly harder.
And Berlin felt responsible.
He felt guilty about this for the rest of his life. It was a stark reminder of the reality of negative liberty, or the lack thereof. In the Soviet Union, a private conversation could destroy you. There was no private sphere.
He also wrote essays about these figures: Churchill, FDR, Chaim Weizmann. These are collected in personal impressions.
And they are brilliant. He had a gift for understanding the human personality behind the historical figure. He didn't just see the prime minister, he saw the man. He saw their quirks, their hedgehogginess, or their foxiness.
Let's talk about his legacy in Oxford. Part 7. He founded a college, which is a rare thing to do, Wolfson College.
Founded in 1966. And it reflected his values. Traditional Oxford colleges were hierarchical. You had the high table where the fellows ate and the students ate down below. It was visually hierarchical.
Classist.
Berlin said, not at Wolfson. At Wolfson, everyone eats together. No high table. It was a physical manifestation of his belief in equality and openness. It was his philosophy of pluralism built into brick and mortar.
He racked up the honors: Order of Merit, knighthood, President of the British Academy, the Jerusalem Prize for Defense of Civil Liberties.
And he deserved them. But he wasn't without critics.
Oh. What was the critique?
Some argued he was too complacent, that his negative liberty was just a defense of the status quo, that he ignored how economic inequality makes freedom meaningless for the poor.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
If I'm starving, the right to free speech feels less important than the right to eat.
The argument is, if I'm free to buy bread but I have no money, am I really free? And Berlin acknowledged it. He wasn't a heartless libertarian. He believed in the New Deal. He believed in social safety nets.
But he drew a distinction.
He insisted that we shouldn't confuse concepts. Money is money. Liberty is liberty. If you lack money, you lack the capacity to use your freedom. But that doesn't mean freedom is money. He wanted to keep the definitions clean so we wouldn't be tricked by demagogues who promise economic freedom while taking away political freedom.
He said, everything is what it is. Liberty is liberty, not equality or fairness or justice.
Exactly. Keep your concepts clear.
He lived a long life, died in 1997, aged 88.
And the tributes were beautiful. They emphasized his prodigiously energetic capacity for enjoyment. He wasn't a tortured philosopher in a garret. He loved life. He loved music. He loved gossip. He radiated well-being.
The joy of thought. I like that phrase.
It fits him perfectly.
So let's bring this all home. What does Isaiah Berlin mean for us today? Why should the listener care about a man who died in 1997?
I think his message is more urgent now than it was in 1958. We are living in a time of hedgehogs.
We are.
Look around. Everyone wants a single answer. It's all about economics. It's all about race. It's all about tradition. It's all about technology. We are surrounded by people who want to purify the world, who want to force their version of the higher self onto everyone else. We are seeing the rise of the one big idea on both the left and the right.
And Berlin is the voice whispering, careful.
Yes. He is the voice saying, there is no inevitability in history. There is no final solution where everyone is happy. You have to choose, and the choice is yours.
And he's warning us about the Farron on the roof, the violence that comes when we think we have the absolute truth.
Precisely. If you believe you have the absolute truth, you can justify dragging the policeman off the roof. You can justify the gulag. You can justify the guillotine. Berlin teaches us that a little bit of doubt, a little bit of the fox's skepticism is the only thing that keeps us civilized.
Doubt isn't a weakness, it's a safeguard.
It is a profound safeguard. It's a call to deep political humility, the acceptance that the world is complex, values clash, and freedom is fragile.
So here's the thought I want to leave you with. In your own life, when you're arguing politics or trying to fix a problem at work or raising your kids, are you acting like a hedgehog, trying to force everything into one big idea?
Or are you brave enough to be a fox?
And are you careful not to step into the trap of positive liberty, thinking you know what's better for people than they know for themselves?
That is the question.
Sir Isaiah Berlin, the Russian Jew from Riga, the talker of Oxford, gave us the map. It's up to us to avoid the traps. Thanks for listening to this deep dive. We'll catch you next time. Stay curious.